This is Build It Baby, the show for big ideas, brave pivots, and bold next chapters. So let's do it. Let's build it, baby. I'm Penelope Bent, and this is Build It Baby. And today we're talking about something most people never stop long enough to consider, and that is the hidden cost of staying where you are. Not because you're lazy, not because you aren't capable, and certainly not because you don't have big dreams, but because sometimes staying still feels safer than moving forward. And then one day you realize staying has been costing you more than leaving ever would have. So let's talk about this. Let's do it. Let's build it, baby. You know what's interesting about the idea of this conversation is that most people spend their lives calculating the risk of change. You know, we talk about this all the time. There's, the fear of change and all the, discomfort that goes along with that. But very few people ever calculate the risk of staying the same. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons people wake up 10 years later wondering, what happened to me? Because the truth is, staying where you are, it has a cost too, a very real cost. And I'm not just talking about, a financial cost. I'm talking emotionally, mentally, spiritually, creatively. I'm talking about the cost to your energy, your confidence, your identity, your joy, your potential. And the very dangerous thing is that those costs usually don't show up all at once. They happen very slowly, very quietly. And it's so quiet that people normalize them. And over time, what once felt like a temporary experience becomes a lifestyle. What once felt off starts feeling very familiar. And eventually, people stop questioning environments, their routines, their relationships, jobs, or identities that no longer fit them. And it's not because they're happy, but because they have learned how to adapt. And adaptation can sometimes look an awful lot like surrender. So this episode is not about blowing up your life tomorrow. It's not about an impulsive decision. It is definitely not about pretending that responsibilities, money, family, obligations, or fear aren't real. I totally get that. They're very real. But this is about bringing to your attention the awareness. Because in my experience, awareness changes everything. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell yourself the truth, being really honest about the truth. Not the polished version, not the survival version, and not the version you tell everyone else about what's going on in your life, but the real version. Because I think there are people listening right now who already know something isn't aligned anymore. You can sense it. You can feel it. You feel it when you wake up exhausted before the day even starts. You definitely feel it on Sunday night. You feel it when you know, oh my gosh, I have to wake up Monday and do this again. You feel it when someone asks, how are you? And you automatically say, I'm good. While something inside you quietly whispers, no, hell no, I'm not good. You feel it when you realize you haven't been excited about your life in a very long time. And maybe what hurts the most is remembering who you used to be or what you used to get happy about. You used to feel possibilities. You used to feel excited. Perhaps you used to imagine things. But somewhere along the way, survival replaced the vision, replaced the dreams, replaced the ideas. And that's happening to a lot of people right now. People are tired. The world has changed very, very fast. The economy has changed. Work has changed. Technology has changed. Relationships have changed. And many people are functioning in a survival mode so consistently that they don't even realize how disconnected they've become from themselves. And I got to tell you, survival mode is tricky. It keeps you focused on getting through the day. But building a meaningful life requires imagining tomorrow. And that's the difference. And when people stay too long in environments that drain them, they slowly stop imagining anything bigger. And that's one of the most hidden costs, the most disastrous costs in my mind. When you're stuck and living in this survival mode, you stop dreaming. You lose the vision. There's a loss of imagination. The loss of belief that something more might actually be possible for you. Now, here's something I really want you to think about. Sometimes people think they're staying because they're being practical. And, I'm sure there are situations where they are. But there are other times they're staying because fear has become very familiar. And familiar can feel very, very safe, even when it hurts. And especially when it hurts slowly. Because human beings can adapt to almost anything, including unhappiness, including emotional exhaustion, including disappointment, including misalignment. People normalize things every single day that are quietly damaging them and possibly even those around them. I know because I've been there. I have walked that walk. And all of a sudden, you no longer realize what has become your normal. The harder it becomes to recognize how much it is actually costing you. That's really why I wanted to have this conversation today. Because I think there are people listening who have been shrinking themselves to fit environments they've already outgrown. And that shrinking comes with a consequence, a real consequence. Let's talk about one of the biggest ones. Shrinking causes you to have, it erodes your confidence. I was in a relationship for about 11 years. And it was very interesting because on the outside, everything looked very beautiful. It was what many would say was perfect. It looked like the perfect couple with the perfect children in the perfect house, living the perfect life. Now, I owned my company at this time. So in some respects, I think when I look back on that period of my life, my company was in some respects my saving grace because I could focus on what I was building, the busyness of being a professional out there. And yet at the same time, my private life had such toxic abuse that, honestly, I didn't see it coming. The more successful my company, the more abusive my relationship became with my partner. And I think what is fascinating to me is knowing the woman that I am today would have never, ever allowed for that kind of behavior from a man, from anyone for that matter. But I know where my head was. I was so busy trying to be the perfect wife, trying to be a successful business owner, trying to be a great mom. I think I was also very, mesmerized by the beautiful home, all the pretty trappings that came with that. My daughter was going to a beautiful school. The picture looked beautiful from the outside. And yet I was dying on the inside. And when I look back, I realize that for many women, we stay in abusive relationships because, frankly, we become as unhealthy mentally, and our confidence is so eroded that we stay because we have developed a very unhealthy behavior ourselves. We have lost our confidence. We have lost who we are as strong women, as strong individuals. And I'm telling you, it doesn't get better. It only gets worse. Because the mental health of the abuser has more leverage now because your strength has diminished. And so you do this dance. And as my company became more successful, the dance became more dramatic. And one thing I learned is that when you stay too long in the wrong place, it destroys your self-trust. Because every time you ignore your intuition, every time you silence what you know, every time you talk yourself out of your own truth, you weaken the relationship you have with yourself. And eventually, people stop trusting their instincts entirely. They stop believing themselves. And that is a huge hidden cost. And here's what makes it even worse. People often think confidence comes from achievement. But you know what? Real confidence actually comes from self-trust. It didn't matter how successful I was in my company. What really mattered is how much I had lost my self-trust, how much I had actually lost myself. So allowing a deep relationship with yourself is so incredibly valuable. Yet we threaten that relationship more than we realize. When we stay too long in a bad relationship, in a miserable job, or just basically a screwed up environment, we are slowly eroding our own foundation, our own life raft, our own solid footing. I know I did that. And when something inside me says, this matters, but I don't listen, what do you think is really happening to my level of confidence? Hell, I remember asking a dear friend if I should feel that this was wrong when I had to go to the doctor for bruised ribs. Where was my confidence there? Where was my truth? Where was my knowing? This is bad. This is wrong. This is not about me. This is about a very unhappy man. When you begin to lose your confidence, that is when people repeatedly abandon themselves. They slowly disconnect from their own inner guidance. And let's talk about another hidden cost. The cost of your identity. This one is massive. Because the longer people stay stuck, the more they begin identifying with the limitation. You start hearing things like, well, this is just my life. Or perhaps maybe this is as good as it gets. And man, If you don't think that can happen to you, then you are hugely mistaken, my friend, because it happened to me. You don't think you can get out. You then start to think, I'm too old. It's too late for me. I missed my chance. And what's really heartbreaking here? Temporary circumstances become permanent identity. I don't deserve any better. And let me tell you, that is very dangerous, because identity drives behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. So when people start identifying themselves as stuck, too late, not capable, not talented enough, not worthy enough, they stop taking the very actions that could change their lives. Unless you have been there, when you are on the outside looking in, you have no idea how damaging years of staying in a bad situation, whether that be personally or professionally, can affect you. And let's look at the cost of staying just on an energy level. Misaligned environments, they drain your energy, and I don't think we can talk about that enough. There are places and people and situations that quietly consume your life force. You can feel it. You can walk into certain environments and immediately feel that heavy, exhausted disconnect. And sometimes people think something is wrong with them. And in reality, it has nothing to do with you. It's your soul reacting honestly to a life that no longer fits. And most importantly, it's harming you. It's not a healthy environment for you. And that matters. And no, this doesn't mean every difficult season means a misalignment. Sometimes growth is uncomfortable. Sometimes discipline is required. And sometimes building something meaningful takes sacrifice. Absolutely. But there is a huge difference between healthy challenge and chronic depletion. One expands you. The other slowly erodes you. It kills you. And I think many people know the difference deep down. Now let's talk about time. Time passes quietly. Trust me, I know. That's the part people underestimate. Years do not announce themselves as they leave. People think they're waiting, but often they're postponing their own lives. Waiting to feel ready. I remember thinking that. I'll wait until the children get out of school, out of high school. I can handle this long enough till I think it's the right time to make the move. Waiting for permission in my own head, waiting to get the guts to get out of a really, really bad situation, waiting for the perfect time. And suddenly 5 years are gone. Suddenly 10 years are gone. And the painful thing is, it's not always failure that makes you make the move. Sometimes the painful thing is realizing how long you ignored yourself. And you know, personally, when I look back on this situation, what is so stunning to me is how my mental health had deteriorated throughout those 11 years. The healthy woman I am today would have never tolerated that type of abuse or behavior. So my biggest takeaway is that when you stay in an unhealthy relationship, whether that be job-related or personally related, your mental health can become as unhealthy and toxic as those around you. And that realization can hit you really hard. But I also want to say something hopeful here. Awareness is powerful. If you have any indication that things are not in a healthy environment, you need to become really honest with yourself. Because the minute you're really honest, movement becomes possible. It may not happen overnight, it may not be magically, but possibilities will start to pop up. And this is where I want listeners to breathe a little easier. You do not need to change everything tomorrow. You do not need to quit your job tomorrow. You do not need to have the entire plan figured out. You don't even need to become a different person overnight. Sometimes transformation begins with a single honest admission that this no longer fits me. And if that doesn't work, ask yourself, how is this situation affecting your children or affecting your spouse? How is the bad job relationship affecting your family? Or how is the terrible relationship with your partner affecting your children? That truth alone can begin changing your life. Because once you stop lying to yourself, you start seeing things differently. And when you see them differently, you begin choosing differently. You know, there was a day I looked at that beautiful home and the lifestyle that my daughter had at the time, and I tried my damnedest to make that terrible experience look good and feel good and work well. And then when the day I woke up and really realized, and not dramatically, but very quietly, that this is never going to change, that this very bad environment is not only killing me, but it will be killing my child because it is a toxic environment. So that one honest truth to myself changed everything. Because quite frankly, I walked out that door with not a shred of clothing. I would have lived in a tent. I would have lived in my car. That's how desperate I was. I didn't care if I left every bank account, every dime, every piece of jewelry. I reached the point where I didn't care. I just wanted a healthy environment, and I wanted to be safe. So, when you start to see things differently, you begin choosing differently, and that's where change begins. And maybe that looks like starting a side hustle. Maybe it's about taking a class or having a conversation with a friend. Maybe it's about setting boundaries, creating a plan, saving money, updating your resume, launching the idea, going back to therapy, getting healthy, writing the book or making the call. You know me, small action steps. Because only through action can you build or rebuild. Now, I want to speak directly to the person listening who feels afraid. I get it. Fear is normal. Of course it is. I'm sure you're terrified. I was terrified. And meaningful change creates uncertainty. But I'll tell you what, my friend, there's a moment that, you're not afraid anymore because you just know it's time to go. It's time to get out. But here's something important I've learned. The goal is not to eliminate fear. The goal is to stop letting fear make every decision for your future. That's different because fear will always find reasons to stay where you are. Always. Fear loves certainty, predictability, familiar, discomfort. But you know what? The growth is when you step out when you are scared shitless. That's when you know that you are making a huge growth step. Growth requires movement, and movement requires courage. So you step out when fear is still on your back. Not giant courage all at once, just enough courage for the next step. And that's all. And honesty. And sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is admit, I want more for my life. Or for me, I just want more for my daughter. I wanted to be the woman she would trust, the woman who would keep her safe. And I didn't need more stuff. I didn't need anything. I needed more truth, more ownership over who I was becoming. And I think that desire is sacred. The desire to tell your truth It will be the most courageous thing you will ever do in your entire life. And I really do mean that. I don't think people are meant to spend their entire lives disconnected from themselves and living their lives for others. I think we are meant to build. We are meant to evolve, to create, to expand, and to become, not by default, but by design. And that does not mean perfection. It just means honesty. It means being awake even enough to recognize when your life is no longer working well. And most importantly, it means doing something about it. So here's the part where I tell you exactly what I know. These are my knowings, the things I no longer question because they've shown themselves to me again and again. Not from a book, but from building, getting knocked down, getting back up, and doing this work in the real world. Okay, so here are my knowings. Number 1, I know that people rarely lose themselves all at once. It happens very slowly, very quietly, one postponed decision at a time. And number 2, I know that survival mode can make people forget who they really are. You can get lost. And number 3, I know your soul recognizes truth long before your mind catches up with it. And number 4, I know that fear sounds practical sometimes, but I also know that fear has talked countless people out of lives they were fully capable of building. So those are my knowings. Okay, so it's time for listener question. And this is terrific. This is from Sonia from Sydney, Australia. What are your most important success factors when launching a startup business? Great question, Sonia. Thank you for asking, and I just hope things are really well there in Sydney, Australia. I'll tell you, it's pretty easy for me. I think number 1, a clear vision as to what you want this business to look like. Although I think you need to be incredibly flexible about your vision as you move forward in your research and putting your business together, because your first vision may change, it may grow, it may morph into something much stronger than maybe the original idea. Number 2, I think you need to be really clear about your commitment, because if you don't have a commitment to take this baby all the way to the bank, then in some respects, I don't know why even begin, because you don't want to, waste time or money, but your commitment is definitely tied to all of the above. You can think about creating a successful business, but if you don't have the commitment to run the entire race, even when it looks pitiful at times, then I think that's something that's a really important and most valuable asset, your commitment. I also think that having a loose strategy, having really done some research, deciding how you were going to monetize this, how soon do you expect that monetization piece to come in, how much, finances, what do they look like as you put the startup together, and also understanding, how much of it can you do with, can you do yourself or do with others so that you don't have a huge outlay of cash. I've never been big on spending a lot of money, especially in the early years. I like building slower and being more aware of where I'm throwing my monies. And then I think really looking at today's marketing, it's much more complicated than it was in the day. I think if you're building something in a physical location, sometimes, like I've said before, I believe that's easier. But those are the elements that I think are very important. Making sure you've got that vision, making sure you have that commitment, a strong strategy, and knowing what marketing is entailed in marketing a successful company today. So great question. Thank you so much, Sonia. And yes, I hope you're having fun there in Australia. Well, it's that time. Thank you for listening to Build It Baby. And please remember that one honest decision, one brave step, one moment of truth can change your entire life. I know you can do this. I know you can build it, baby. Always best, P. Build It Baby is a Rainy Day Production House original. Hosted by Penelope Bent and produced and edited by Morgan Clymer. Music by Yuri Shemshashin and Oleksiy Holobiev. If this episode spoke to you, please follow the show and leave a review. It helps more dreamers like you find us. And remember, you're not just building a bold business or a career, you're building a bold life.